All right, let's welcome back Coach Timmerman. He's now the OC at North Forsyth High School. Coach, welcome back.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thanks for having me. Glad to be on.
Um, yeah, so now you're at a new high school. You had a switch. You are now, instead of being the O-line coach, you're now the OC. I think tight ends. I think I saw you put that too. So you made
Yes,
this
sir.
big switch. So what was that like? Switching high schools. Now you're OC instead of just O-line coach. Now you're in charge. Now you're the guy making the decisions.
Yeah, so I mean, it was, it's something that I've been preparing for, but it's kind of one of those things where you can, it's definitely good to be prepared, but you can't really, simulate it or prepare for it until you really get in that position. But yeah, I've been at Grayson High School the last 4 years as offensive line coach, and saw an opportunity to become an offensive coordinator. And that's something that, like I said, I've been wanting to do and had been preparing for, but had never really felt like it was the best time to do it. Especially being at a program like Grayson, and I really enjoy coaching offensive line. And so, I felt like I could be a little picky, felt like that I could, really kind of take my time and wait for a place that, I felt like had a lot of the things that I was looking for, and North Forsyth fit the bill. I was fortunate enough to kind of get into contact with Coach Kraft, the head coach, through a mutual friend of ours, who had coached for him at North Forsyth before coming to Grayson. So that's kind of how we got linked up a little bit. And yeah, it's a great place. It's in a great area. The community is awesome. The coaching staff is great. Coach Kraft has been awesome. He's awesome to work for. Our players are great. They've got really great attitudes. They're very coachable. So it's been great as far as just kind of the transition from that part. Found a really nice apartment complex to live in. Got my first floor unit now. Not living on the third floor anymore, which is nice. Right by the pool house and the grills and stuff. So it was nice to get out there during the summer and stuff. So it's been good. And yeah, it's definitely a different role for sure. Versus just being the line coach. And I was fortunate to be on staffs in the past where we were able to collaborate. Offensively. Very rarely, if ever, was it just one person.
Right,
Just sitting in a room saying, okay, this is exactly what we're going to do this week, and I don't need any input from anybody.
right.
Uh, so been fortunate to be on staffs where you can kind of, be part of that game planning process, and be part of that collaborative effort. But obviously, now you're kind of on the different side of things of, it's not like, assigning, what guys are doing. And that's the big thing is, the play calling part is mostly the easy part of the job.
Hmm.
It's the actual coordinating part that a lot of people maybe forget about. Of you're now in charge not just of your position group of young men, of players, of high school kids. You're now in charge of other grown men. Some
Right.
of who
Yeah.
some of who might be older than you and have been coaching for longer than you. Um,
Hmm.
and in our case, Coach Kraft also coaches the receivers. So it was one of those things where, like, okay, this is what I think the receivers should be doing, but let me check with the head coach. You know what I mean? So it was good though, but everybody's been super supportive. It was definitely a situation where, okay, here's this idea I have for how I want to do things. Here's the reality of what we're working with. How can those two things merge? And for the most part, we were able to slide right in and do things, pretty much how I imagined. You know, I came in right before spring ball. I think it was in April when I like first met the team and stuff. So everybody did a pretty good job of kind of getting the offense installed and getting ready for spring. And we had a good spring, had a good summer. Uh, and so that's a credit to our kids and the coaches and everything. So it's been a good transition. I'm looking forward to year two and getting a full off season.
Right. Yeah, I remember being like 25 years old and I became an OC the day before the season started because our head coach decided to leave the first day of practice
Oh wow.
for personal reasons. Me and him are friends, and I'm like the only person that knows why. And I was like, yeah, go. And then they made the DC the head coach. Steve, you were the only one that messed with offense with this guy. So you know it. You're going to be the OC like that. And I'm like 25 years old.
Oh wow.
And that was like the biggest thing was, well, now I was kind of like the running back guy instead of the O line. Well, then it became, well, we have a guy to do that. You can just kind of manage everything. And that was the biggest thing at 25 was now you're, like you said, you have to know the wide receivers and what they're doing. What are they playing? Like, and I tried to make it to where the coaches come up with their own drills, but you had to make sure, like, what are they
Yeah.
doing today? Is the offensive line do what they need to do? Um, this kid is a tight end. Maybe he's not a wide receiver. Do you send him with the O lineman today? It's up to you. Blah blah blah. Then, like you said, then there was like two coaches that were like 20 years older than me that would just say whatever they wanted to me, and then you have to like realize: do you argue with them right now in front of everybody, or do
Yeah.
you go in the locker room and argue? And then if you don't like what's going on, do you put your foot down and say, well, then this is what you're going to do? But the difference between you and me was I wasn't prepared to do that. I wanted to, but then when it hits, you're like, oh shit, you were prepared. But the biggest part was dealing with coaches that were older than you,
Yeah.
trying to, I don't know if nuance football, because I wanted to be spread 11 personnel, do these things. The town was, well, we've been I formation forever. And I'm like, well, that's cool. I want to do this. Like, we
Yeah.
need to do this. That's cool. And then the head coach is like, well, I kind of want to go spread too. And then it became, well, this is the way we've always done it. And that's where I sit down and I'm 25 years old. I'm like, I hate that phrase. And
Yeah.
that was, I hear what you're saying. Like that's some of the biggest stuff. And that's before you even try to build relationships with the kids and all that. Like that's
Oh yeah.
before.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is, and fortunately for us, mostly, at least on the offensive side of the ball, most of us are pretty much around the same age range.
Yeah.
Coach is, yeah, maybe a little bit older, but for most of us, we're all in the same age range. And so, our coaches did a phenomenal job of just, kind of embracing what we wanted to do and certainly, had their contributions of things in certain areas, but, never did I felt like, I was getting pushed back in any type of
Right.
thing. There were times where I was worried. I was like, man, these guys probably think I'm a total idiot. Because you want, especially when you're around new people, you want things to go perfect, right? Because
Right.
you like, every little thing that happens out there on the offensive side of the ball is a reflection of you as the coordinator. And so, there were definitely times where I was like, man, these guys probably think I'm an idiot. Why did the head coach hire this guy? Um, all this other stuff. And so that was definitely something I just kind of had to get over,
Right.
just, understand that, they do got my back and it's not going to look perfect. They're high school kids, right?
Right.
Um, and again, still not having year one, hadn't had a full off season, and you could definitely see the improvement as the year went on. So it's definitely just kind of one of those mental things where you just got to kind of trust yourself and just trust in the preparation that you've done leading up to it, and not get caught up in well, what if this person thinks this or that person thinks that. Just if you're around good coaches, that they got your back, and that's fortunately been the case of the guys that I've been able to work with.
Yeah. I realized I coach football at like six different high schools and I've had to be with new coaches every year. And I do that. I'm not even the OC and I come in and you have to like feel like you're proving yourself and be like, I want to show you that I know what's what. And there's
Yeah,
time to put my foot in my mouth where you try to, or I might come off as I know it all. Cause so when they give you an idea, since you come off that way, it becomes, no, 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 we're not going to do that. And I learned
yeah,
a long time ago that no, like I could say this and has an idea. I might say, that's brilliant. Let's switch it right then and there. And then now you've built that trust factor of, hey, this guy listened to me and he's not even my boss. We're just the same. And like, listen, I'm like, hey, let's like even the run game. They know not to come up to me with offensive linemen and tell me technique. Everybody knows you do not come up to me and tell me technique, but
yeah,
they could come up and you look at the whole scheme and you could say this, and I will sit down and listen to people
yeah,
but they have to give me the why behind it. Like, okay, well, why? Where does this come from? Because I'll tell you why we do it this way. As long as you have the why, I'll listen to it. And if it's great, I'll switch it. And it's
Mhm.
like perfect. And so I learned that I can't come off that way. But when I was younger, it was I know everything. Now that I'm in my 30s, it's like, well, I obviously don't know everything. Each week it's going to change, obviously, and um, make sure we're not too complicated, all that stuff. And like you said, right now I'm with good coaches that we have conversations. Like me and the OC just have conversations about it. He'll come up with an idea. If he explains it to me, but then I explain why it might not work, he might be like, okay, we won't do it. And that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Great.
I think that's also why it's super important, for you as a coordinator to kind of have have a core system, or a core belief of who you want to be, an identity, if you will. So
Right.
like our coaches know that, I, as far as the offensive philosophy goes, I'm an air raid guy.
Uh-huh.
Not necessarily saying we run the air raid, but that's kind of my background. That's what I know, and as far as the schemes and the concepts and stuff, and then in the run game, it's outside zone, inside zone. That's kind of my background, and so I think without having a core identity and having that being known to your coaches, I think that's when you get into a situation where people just bring you just random ideas from all over the place, and so we're not going to be, unfortunately, we're not going to be in a situation where the running backs coach sees this really cool, like, pistol double slot triple option play on Twitter that went 50 yards for a touchdown. That may be a cool play, but we're not going to do that. That's not who we are.
Right.
Um, and so, that's definitely something that I think is important. Now, obviously, especially at the high school level, you're going to have to, tweak and adjust a little bit. And that's certainly kind of the fine line, the tightrope that you walk. At least I felt like, in terms of, okay, what's my, vision of what our offensive identity is going to be.
Mhm.
Okay. What do we actually have time to do? Especially
Right.
like I said, not getting started really until spring ball, last spring. And then, okay, what are our kids actually good at? So kind of merging all of those different factors together, and figuring out, okay, what do we do, or what can we do, was definitely something that you have to be prepared for, especially at the high school level.
So because you guys get spring ball, we don't come into spring ball, you're kind of installing, you get the summer. Was there any like bumps in the road of trying to maybe change whatever they used to do, or getting coaches on the same page? And not saying it would be an argument, but just kind of
Yeah.
gearing it towards that to make sure that it's going to be what you envisioned. And then was like you said, was there tweaks you had to make? Like, okay, maybe inside zone struggles, we got to kind of lean towards this, or maybe they could pull and do other things. Like, was there anything like
Yeah.
that that happened?
Yeah. I mean, a little bit. I mean, they had been somewhat of, I guess you call it a spread system before I got there, and they had had a really good year the year before I got there, and so obviously we were trying to continue that going on, and yeah, there were some things. We ended up not running outside zone as much as maybe I had done in the past, just because our kids were really really good at counter. And so that was something that, and they had done a lot of like one back power, I guess maybe, some people call it dart, or whatever, had done a lot of that before. So we did a little bit more of that, than I, maybe, again, like I said, you envision, or,
Mhm.
or whatever. And then, so just little things like that. Yeah. And I was fortunate to come into a situation where, and this was I kind of mentioned earlier, part of my checklist, if you will, of where I would want to go is, I was able to come in and, like, we changed all the verbiage and terminology. It's all my stuff.
Right.
For the most part, obviously there might be situations where, like, hey, what did you guys call this last year? Oh, we called it XYZ. Oh, we can just keep it that.
Mhm.
There's little things like this, but for the most part, the core of our offense, our formation names, or how we signal stuff, and how we call this or that or whatever is mine.
Mhm.
And that was something that I was looking for. I didn't want to come into a situation where, okay, yeah, you can be the OC, and maybe you can even call plays, but this is the offense we're running.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I don't think some people may be really good at that, but I don't think that's something that I would have thrived in. This is a system that again, it's not necessarily 100% original as far as the concept stuff. When we run stick, we run four verts, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Obviously, I didn't come up with any of that stuff, but just how we communicate and the logistics, the backbone of the offense, if you will, is stuff that I've been kind of working on for the past few years, and so was able to come in and implement some of that stuff for the most part. But yeah, I mean, you're always going to have things, especially if it's little things, where okay, yeah, this is how you put this guy over here. Oh yeah, we can just call it that.
Right.
Oh, this is what you guys call this motion. Oh, you already have a signal for it. Yeah, let's just keep it like that. So definitely little things like that are easy to implement. Um, but nothing really too crazy as far as like, golly, I don't know how we're going to make this work. Our guys did a really, really good job of adapting and implementing the new system.
Did it kill you not to run wide zone as much because you are the wide zone guy? Did it hurt you a little?
Yeah, yeah, it did, and that's definitely going to be an emphasis of mine this off season is kind of getting with our O line, maybe being a little more involved with them in off season and stuff like that, and moving forward, just to really coach that play up. Which I mean, our kids did a good job with it over the summer, and our O line coach Palmer did a good job of. Even though it was something they had not really done before, was doing a good job coaching it. But like I said, we just as the season went on, some other runs just kind of emerged for us to be a little more consistent, which is understandable. But hopefully, yeah, that's my baby.
Well,
That's my go-to play for sure. So hopefully, we can get it going in year two.
well, that's why I was excited because like I learned some of it from you and other people like years ago, and it's hard to believe it's been years ago where like I've had
Yeah,
you guys on. That kind of happened last year. Like last year was the first time they let me put this play in, and it kind of became more of outside zone because we would have a tight end on the outside and just seal. So it was never true wide zone. It was more like just
yeah,
around. This year, wide zone became like a play called all the time.
hmm,
And it worked a lot, even if we just got a yard or something. And I'm like, guys,
yeah,
that's what it's supposed to look like because eventually one is going to pop off. Or like there was one because we were a straight pistol team this year, besides certain plays were sidecar trying to do different read things. Because I thought wide zone worked better out of a pistol set to get him the ball. And there was one time where the cutback came all the way almost to the backside guard tackle.
oh
And
yeah,
running back was like, I'm sorry that I cut it back way far this way. And I'm like, what are you apologizing to me for? You got 7 yards, and this is what it's supposed to look like. Because
oh
they're like,
yeah,
yeah, everybody went this way. I just looked back and boom, I went this way. And I'm like, that's what it's supposed to look like. And
yeah,
and so I just was excited to tell you that now because we had the opposite here. It didn't really go for you guys this year since we ran it all last year and off season because all summer all we did was inside zone, wide zone. Then as we would get into the season, we would add more, but those were the only two. So when we could have co-practices with teams and go against them. That's the only two we had. And I said, this is what we're gonna get good at: inside zone, wide zone, inside zone, wide zone. And anytime they screwed it up, what are you supposed to do on wide zone? They go run. I'm like, run, run, get there.
yeah,
The only thing that made me frustrated was I just had them step and go, just step and go. They would get tired and just go more forward. So I had to do like a bucket step, like get it all the way here and go, which I didn't like, but it wasn't for every kid.
yeah.
That was the only thing I hated, but it became our play. Like it, that's what I was excited. I was like, hey, it was our play this year.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's one of those things that you just get the kids to trust and understand, like, hey, speed off the ball will fix 90% of your problems.
Hmm.
All the twisting and stunning in fronts and all that stuff. If you'll just trust it and everybody do their job, and you get kind of all five or six guys or however many it is you got up there, just speed off the ball as one solid unit, man. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Oh yeah, and we had three or so different running backs, and they all brought something different. Like we had a speedster, but his problem was sometimes he'd be too fast. Like he'd get there too fast and try to do it. We had another guy that could do it, but he wasn't as fast, but his wicked cut was there. Then we had another
Yeah.
kid that was like slow, but since he was so slow and they went all the way forward, it would cut back farther. And so it was like
Yeah.
running back by committee. And then we loved because our quarterback could move. We would just call it like wide zone boot. Okay, now we're going to peel you back and throw it. Like
Mhm.
it worked a lot. Uh, we tried it from sidecar here and there, and I just kept telling the OC, and he knows this. Stop running it from sidecar because I don't like the way because now it becomes like plant get downhill quicker than reading it. I like downhill reads.
Yeah.
That was the one thing this year. I'm sure he could still hear in the headset. I'm like, stop calling it from sidecar.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We had success with both, at Grayson, and really the first 2 years we were more pistol, and then especially year one we were very heavy pistol. Year two we were still a good bit of pistol, started to do a little more of the sidecar stuff, and then year three and year four, we were almost exclusively sidecar. So
Yeah.
it was good to kind of get experience with both and kind of knowing the slight tweaks of both. And sometimes sometimes you are better at one than the other, depending on maybe your O line or your back or whatever it is. So that's another little thing you kind of got to experiment with is, are we better doing it at pistol or sidecar or maybe some combination of both, depending on which running backs in the game. So yeah, it can definitely be an either or situation.
Yeah. If we kind of did it from sidecar. Sometimes it might be like a jet sweep thing where it becomes outside zone kind of thing.
Yeah.
The reason why we went pistol was because we had new running backs. Like I said, we had about three or four. Since I'm like the run game guy, I kept looking at everything and I'm like, what's going on with sidecar or, whatever. And it just, our running backs' visions were not the best.
Mhm.
And so I guess our inside zone, you could call it mid zone because I have to overcompensate because it's high school.
Yeah.
I know purists are going to throw up. I call it inside zone, but we're aiming at the center because my hope is they'll aim at the guard because when I tell them to aim at the guard, they were getting to C gap because they
Yeah.
want to get there quick. So for me to overcompensate, I said aim for the center. So hopes of they're actually going to get hit the guard. But the vision was so bad. I said, let's just go out a pistol. They get downhill and they're able to make a move and do whatever because we double team on inside zone.
Mhm.
And then the plus side was I told them, well, then we can do wide zone better from pistol to help their vision. And then our coach really wanted to do like a sweep. And I said, perfect, get in pistol, it's a toss play, crack, go. Like it just makes more sense instead of having to move all over the place. If we
Yeah.
could do a sidecar thing, it was jet sweep. It might be a power read situation. It might be, a quick play action, or we go in a heavy set king queen thing where now we could just hand it off and not give anything away. But that
Yeah.
was one thing for us was our running back's vision. So pistol like eased all the pain of their vision because I'm like, all you're doing is stepping and going, stepping and going. There's no aiming point go, you know,
Yeah.
because they would freak out when they're standing sidecar, they're looking around, trying to see. And if it's inside zone, they're getting to the C gap. And I'm like, don't go to that C gap because I got nobody out there for you.
Yeah.
So if you get hit and you complain, I'm going to say, remember when I told you that I have no protection out there for
Oh
any.
yeah.
And so pistol, but then pistol kept defense balanced and that helped a lot, dealing with a transfer senior running back that ran wing T stuff. Now we're trying to get him to do spread
Mhm.
stuff.
Oh yeah.
That is crazy for people. If a kid is playing in the wing T and now you're trying to get him to do inside zone, wide zone, it takes a lot because they're like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to go to the C gap on power. And I'm like, no, I don't know where you're going. And he goes, what do you mean you don't know? And I'm like, it could be A gap, it could be B gap.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I was like, because I don't know how. What if they slant and the guard has to move around in his pole, or what if they go up? Like, it's real funny. So I want people to do that. Find a kid that's playing the wing T or something and try to coach them in that. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. Different worlds in some aspects.
Oh, it is. And then we had a guard come from the same school. Me trying to teach him inside zone stuff because he was like, well, I'm supposed to block this guy. And I'm like, well, you're thinking of your gap schemes. Like a zone, I don't know who necessarily you're always going to block.
Hmm.
Well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you could call a double team here, but if they stun and he disappears, you got to stay on that path and make sure we're not protecting that gap. And sometimes he could get it and sometimes he couldn't. So I said, hey, you might be a defensive nose guard. Like, let's just switch this around. You go play
Yeah.
some defense. That's another fun thing to do is to take a kid from that and try to coach him in that. Because that
Yeah.
was, we double team on inside zone or mid zone. A team finally exploited the weakness and said, what if we just slant everybody as hard as we can? And
Hmm.
that disrupted it a lot. So I had to go back to traditional inside zone of like, we're just going to step and go just to
Yeah.
cover people up. And then teams stopped doing it. Like the rest of the year after they saw that film, stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And that was my tweak. I had to get rid of the double teams and it killed me because I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to double team and move people. Now I got to just step and go.
Right.
Getting one on one with a linebacker, which I don't want to do, hated it.
Yeah. That was a call or a tweak we would have up front that our guys would make if if we were playing a team that was getting a lot of movement or maybe had overloaded a side or whatever, we had certain calls that we would use both on inside zone and outside zone to let us know like, hey, the double teams are probably off. This is we're just working our tracks. As we had certain calls for that versus those types of defenses where they wanted to move and stem and slant a lot.
Yeah, because this team was fast. They slant. They'd send like two or three linebackers, and then the lineman got to worry about double teams. Linebacker would come through, so I just kind of had to build that wall. And then
Right.
when we did it, a lot more split zone was happening to try to make sure that no spillage came from that side. Like
Yeah.
the double teams was more of like we can run like the zone lead stuff with like the
Mhm.
wing instead of split zone. Then when we had switched to that, it was a quick let's start doing split zone. But what's great about zone stuff like that, like you said, is that was a tweak. So that was a tweak I made at halftime and it was easy.
Yeah.
Like we didn't just add it, it was just a tweak. And I
Hmm.
think for us this year, that was better because last year we would have put everything in. This year I made sure, hey, let's do this against this team. And I said, cool, that will be an adjustment. Let's not, put everything in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like, no, I don't want to play the what if game anymore in the run game. Like we have to make sure that the kids don't think, running backs don't think, our young quarterback doesn't freak out. And I think that also helped us like get to the playoffs because we stayed healthy. And then those things, we didn't overwhelm them. It was just tweaks. So like a
Right.
tweak for the zone, super simple. Wide zone. If they slanted in really hard, brought somebody else, and now everybody's covered, I said, okay, let's add a wing there. Now he can go. Like it was just tweaks, like formational tweaks.
Yeah.
I think we were all smarter as coaches for those kids to like do those things. Um, and we shifted this year, which was fun, like shifting to different things. And the
Oh
beauty
yeah.
of it was didn't do it till the playoffs. Practiced it all year, never showed it. First round of the playoff game. Let's send this lineman over here, this tight end over here. Only have one guard here. Everybody's over here, and the team they literally went like this, and we just ran wide zone and got like 20 yards on it. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was clapping. I was like, yes, here we go.
That was one of my favorite touchdowns from when I was at Grayson was we were playing in a playoff game and we had a little set where we would line up in an empty look and essentially on one side we had a free access gift route
Yeah,
to a single receiver and then over here to the trips bunch side we would have like a fast screen basically we would tell the quarterback either left or right and if we didn't like either one of those we called it squash. We'd squash down into whatever our favorite formation was that week in our favorite run. And we were playing this team in the playoffs and we lined up in empty and we squashed it down to run outside zone to the right. And they were a big they were a 3-4 team, but they were a big like formational strength team. Like they're gonna
right.
like these two guys are gonna travel to the formation strength, these two guys are gonna go away. And so we shifted down. And by the time we snapped the ball, we're running to the right. By the time we snapped the ball, there was nobody from the center over to the right side. We caught him. We caught him in the middle of switching to strength. And so my center, right guard, right tackle, and our sniffer had nobody to block. And we literally like walked into the end zone like a 20-yard touchdown. It was great.
That almost kind of happened where we did the unbalance, but nobody was on the weak side. So then all of our shifts were like no huddle.
Mm-hmm.
So that way we could see we'd be in a regular formation And the reason why is because exactly what happened. Second round of the playoffs, we would go no huddle. They start to cheat thinking where we were going to shift based off of it, and we would just go away from them.
Right.
They didn't send anybody to the weak side. Bunch guy here, we just jet motion this way, run toss, and he just followed him. And it was not a touchdown, but it was still enough. So
Yeah.
then they had to shift it back, and we're like, okay, now nobody's here. Let's run ISO. So we just run boom, and we had so much fun with it. But the kids kept getting frustrated. Why do we practice this and we haven't used it in a game yet? And I said, because if we don't need to, we aren't going to,
Yeah.
you know. And that's what happened in the playoffs. Second half, we were like, let's do something we haven't done yet, and we started to do that. Another thing we never did all year, our sophomore quarterback, we were just like, hey, don't pull the ball in the inside zone ever. Just fake it. Well, why? And we said, one, it sets up the slip to throw it to the wing. But two, it allows you to have all season to kind of learn how to read this, blah, 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 blah. It's technically your freshman year as a sophomore. Second round of the playoffs, we're in a tight games. We're at halftime. I looked at the OC. I said, it's time. Let him start pulling the ball. And we were going against a Division I defensive end. He was getting recruited by like the MAC.
Mm-hmm.
We made him look silly, just silly, because he on film never saw the quarterback keep it. He just kept going in. Our kid hurdled him. And I was an asshole. I was like, this is a Division I kid. Like I was just being a jerk. And I used to coach at that high school. So I told that head coach that afterwards. I was like, that's Division I defensive end. He goes, this was his worst game of
Oh yeah.
all year, because he couldn't catch our quarterback. He kept going in on inside zone. And they're like, well, your quarterback never ran on film unless it was a scramble. And we're like, this is why we waited for this moment. But
Yeah.
like I said, we turned the ball over 5 times, so that doesn't help you win games.
No, it's tough to do. Tough to win when you got 5 turnovers. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Um, so with you bringing like air raid in, I know you're not true air raid, but do you like practice it like air raid, like the pat and go stuff and set up a noose? Like, is it all just like that stuff?
Yeah, as much as we can. That's part of our our specialty period or pre-practice. Whatever people want to call it. We do pat and go. We do noose. We have a mesh drill that we work. To work on mesh. Even though I didn't call it as much as I should have this year, but so yeah, and then we'll have days where we devote to working our four vertical stuff
Mhm.
and reading those routes out. So yeah, we try to do a lot of that type of stuff. Just because even if you're not even if you're not an air raid offense, every offense is going to have situations where you got to settle up in noose or
Mhm.
you got to catch an over the shoulder ball. So, but yeah, we try to implement a lot of that stuff for sure.
Yeah, we did the same thing, but we used it. I don't know if you do this. Maybe you do. It was like stations type of thing where,
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've toyed around with it as well. Just kind of we did something similar to that at my last year at Northside. We did some Tony Franklin stuff, and
Mhm.
I don't know if that is necessarily a Tony Franklin thing, but we did sort of a station things where we mixed in pat and go and a couple of other things.
Yeah, our OC saw it somewhere last year because he wanted to use it as like, hey, instead of doing the flex period of a stretch and all this stuff, why can't we just go out there and have speed do these things? So like
Yeah,
one station, they was just a circle, like they were just going around and here's set up and news, here's pat and go, here's ball security,
yeah,
here's you're going to run the quarterback will be here at this station telling you what route to run. So it might be a slant, it might be an out, it might be a hitch. He's
hmm
going to tell you, and you're just practicing on that stuff. But the problem was we almost couldn't do it every day because we can't two platoons. So you might start the day on defense. So they're doing something for defense. Then when you get
yeah,
to offense, they're already warmed up, they're already doing things. And so it's like, should you even do it? And so it
yeah.
was almost an every other day thing.
Yeah, that's the only thing, sometimes with some of the college stuff, even the air raid college stuff, like the traditional routes on air type of thing is it's a lot easier to do when you got 5 quarterbacks on the depth chart
Yeah.
who can all, even if your fifth string quarterback may not necessarily be that good, compared to the starter, but they're still college quarterbacks, they can all throw
Yeah.
the ball.
Yeah.
Versus maybe a high school situation where you're rolling out there with 2 guys, you
Yeah.
know, and then, you may need to have coaches throw the other three or whatever. So yeah, there's, things like that you may have to kind of tweak a little bit, or maybe, you just do some half line quick game stuff or whatever. But, we typically when we did want to do like all five, we had three quarterbacks, not including our ninth grade quarterback who would come up later in the season. So we would have three quarterbacks and then two coaches throwing. It's kind of typically how we would do it if we did a full 5-man routes on air, which wasn't super often. But the pat and go and new stuff we did pretty much every day.
Yeah. We when we did that, we had to have a coach throw the set open news because we had to have a quarterback throw the deep stuff and then call the routes because we're all old. We're not throwing the deep ball because our arms will get thrown out.
Yeah.
We wanted that trust with the quarterback telling them what route to run as long as it was a quick game. So we were like, oh, we can do this ball security. A coach can throw the pat and go. I can't remember the other station, whatever. It might have been blocking. I think it was the receivers blocking.
Mhm.
And we're not, we have some air raid concepts, but we're not an air raid team. Like we're not going to sit there and tell you we're air raid, but
Yeah.
we have mesh, we have shallow, we have white cross. Some of it's not Mike Leach's, the OC has and sometimes when he showed it to me, I'm like, well, the first time he showed it to me like 2 years ago, I said, this is an air raid. He goes, what do you mean? And I was like, this isn't Mike Leach's routes. What are you doing? He found
Yeah.
it from whoever. And I'm like, okay, it's probably air raid, but it's not my like. He goes, what do you
Yeah.
mean? I had to show him Mike Leach's, and I'm like, this is air raid.
Right. Right.
But I accept the fact that other people run air raid. Like when I talked to Matt Mummy last spring or this spring, he told me that he's like, yeah, you could call it air raid as long as it has these things. It could be air raid. It doesn't have to be this. And I was like, okay, you're the son of the Godfather. If you say it, then it's true.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's evolved over the last 30 years. Even Leach and Mummy do things, differently in some regards. And so definitely when you start getting into, guys like Kingsbury, or,
Hmm.
some of the other guys, Lincoln Riley, some of those guys that sort of run air raid staples, but they've also changed it to mix in with like maybe some pro style stuff. It's, you know, outside of maybe a few purists like Coach Leach was. Sometimes it can be hard to define. Okay, is this an air raid guy? Is he not? But typically, like Coach Leach would say, it's more about how you practice. It's more of a philosophy than the types of plays or the plays you run, or necessarily the specific routes you run. It's more of a philosophy about how you practice. And but it's definitely something that's evolved over the last 30 years for sure.
And then something else I tried to do was I was trying to bring the feed the cats thing from Tony Holler because
Yeah, love that stuff.
I my buddy did it years ago. He tried to explain it to me and it just never clicked. I'm like, what are you talking about? This doesn't make sense. Um, then I talked to Coach Dixon, who does the sprint-based football stuff, and had him on here when COVID happened. He explained it to me, and I'm still sitting there going, none of this makes sense to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Then I got to my school now, and then for some reason last year, I really wanted to know more about it. So I kept asking my buddy about it. And then I finally said, you know what? Why don't I just go to the man? And so I sent him a message and I was like, Coach Holler, can you come on here? And he's like, sure. Hopped on. Found out he lives 10 minutes down the street from me because I know he coached at a
Wow.
high school. He coaches a high school near me. I just didn't know where he lived. He goes,
Yeah.
my kids went to this high school. And I was like, well, I coached basketball there 2 years ago. He goes, yeah, I live right down the street from it. And I'm like, that's 10 minutes from where I live.
Wow.
Crazy. Um, and now it clicks with me. Like the whole thing is starting to click with me.
Yeah.
I bring it to my head coach. Same thing. He goes, this doesn't, no, he played linebacker in college. So his mindset is hit, hit, hit. We're going to do all this, do all this.
Yeah.
And then as it kind of, I can't plant the seed, and he's talking to people, he finally goes, maybe we'll get there. And so this year was like the first time where we kind of did less, but it wasn't everybody. Like I can only speak for me. I didn't hit as much with the O line this year. I made sure not to do as much one on ones as I used to do. I made sure that I would look at the defensive line game plan that day because they have to go both ways and they practice it. Like my O line didn't have to play both ways, but they practiced it. So if
Yeah.
I said, okay, hey, D line today, what are you going to do in individual time? Are you guys going to then do inside run and team, or are you just doing inside run? And I had to look at it, and my head coach would go, "Why?" Well, tell me what you're doing. And he goes, "Oh, defensive line is going to do this in individual, but they have inside run and team." And I said, "Okay, offensively, we're not going to hit it all in individual." Wait, what do you mean? I'm like, because think about it. Let's say it's defensive line first. They're doing their D line individual. Then they go do inside run. Then they turn around and do team. Then they get to offense. If I have them hit individual, turn around and go play scout or go around and do this, that's a lot of hitting
Yeah.
for 3 days leading into Friday. And so, like, we'd hit bags, we would just work on footwork, we would work on location. Then if it was flip flop, if defense wasn't hitting that day, then I might say, okay, today we're going to do a lot of pass protection hitting because of this or that. I had to really sit down and look at it. And we didn't do up downs. We didn't run for punishment. I just said, hey, go. I literally would say, go sit by the goalpost and just sit down like you're in a timeout. Like I wasn't going to do any of that anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it was literally like game 5. I kept asking the old line, how do we feel? And we go, we still feel great. Like everything
Yeah.
feels good. And we were healthier this year. And then I think some of the other coaches started to feed off of that. And I kept trying to feed the whole, hey, today, why don't we just work on quick games so we're not getting to full speed? And then tomorrow we can work on getting full speed with deeper routes and all that stuff. And it slowly started to form. And now I'm like in charge of figuring out how can we do it full whatever. The only thing we
Yeah.
still did that I hated was the flex period. Hey, let's do these stretches and this movement. And I was like, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
Waste
Yeah.
of
That's
time.
haven't done like true static stretching in several years. We'll do a dynamic warm up and stuff like that, but I'm big on the feed the cat stuff. Training race horses, not work horses, right? We're trying to
Mhm.
build speed, trying to be fast and be fresh, and all that stuff. And I mean, any idiot can go out there and make people tired. That
Yeah.
doesn't take any type of training or thought process or anything really. If you just want to make them tired, anybody can do that. That's not hard at all. But
Mhm.
how can we structure everything from our time in the weight room to our speed training to our practices over spring, summer, and then even into the season of making sure that we're keeping guys as fresh as possible. We did something here at North that I'd never done before. Of our Wednesday morning practice is a walkthrough. No helmets, no pads, nothing. Now and we'll get out there versus a scout team. We'll have scout guys out there and kind of go through our stuff or whatever. But it's no pads, no helmet, no contact in any way. And it's an hour. It's a it's right around an hour.
Mhm.
Just to kind of give their bodies a little bit of a break while still kind of keeping their minds sharp, but still keeping it short where they do get a little bit of a break from it on Wednesday. So I think that's something that helped keep our kids fresh. Like I said, it was kind of a break a little bit in the middle of the week before you start to ramp back up again on Thursday and then obviously Friday.
Yeah, isn't it crazy how like when we all played, it was just a normal thing to like run and do this stuff. And then I coached that way. Like it was hit or miss. It was either like get away from me, go sit down, or you're gonna run a lap, and that was the thing. And then talking to Coach Holler all of a sudden, and it was the best when he before I hit record, I said I am gonna ask you stupid questions, and he was like, "Good, because how can you fix stupid if you don't like ask these questions or something?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Hey, I'm not afraid to tell you the truth either. I'm not afraid to say whatever." And like he did say that. I said, what about the schools that have just never they win? Because that's the argument. The schools that win and just still do things that way. And I can't he says all the time, I can't remember his phrase. He was like, even dumb people can do whatever. And I'm like, that's hilarious. And, now
Well,
my
at high school level, high school level, you're gonna have schools or programs that that probably would win regardless of what they do in the weight room, what they do offensively, schematically, defensively. Sometimes you just run into that in certain states or certain areas where it doesn't really matter what this program does. They just have better better players. It's
Uh-huh.
consistently year in and year out, and it doesn't really matter what they do. They're still going to be typically, for the most part, better than everybody else around them.
Yeah. Yeah. And at least for us, like I said, COVID set us back and we're not a big, like our kids are not big. We roll into a varsity game with like 35 kids, 40 kids healthy, going up against schools with like 60. And we were healthy. I'm not saying because we were not full on feed the cats by any stretch. We did not do these things, but we did do less, like more
Yeah.
than we ever have. And I think our head coach bought in, but like this the I told him I was like, yeah, our strength guy, he interned at Northwestern for 2 years. So we got to go to a practice 2 years ago and the same static flex period, we do the exact same stuff they do. Like it was
Mhm.
mirroring it. And he does not like Northwestern. So when I told him that, he was like, and they're the slowest team in the Big Ten and stuff like that. And so every day in practice, we're doing flex. I'm like, this is stupid. This is stupid. And the head coach is like, yeah, but it gets us organized. And I'm like, well, this is still stupid because this. So then there was times where I said, yeah, let's get tired before practice. Let's do that. And they have to look at me and say, Steve, shut up. And I'm like, this makes no sense to me. And it's just crazy how it doesn't make sense anymore where it used to. Like I was that guy, like, do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
Skip all the kids ask me, they're like, well, when do we stretch? When do we do this? I was like, we don't. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I give you 10 minutes to shoot around and move around. There's your movement. And then the first thing we do is something half court where we're moving around. And then all of a sudden I'll get you full, like up and down. Basketball is a whole different animal trying to figure out like how to not make them tired
Yeah.
because what's the old thing in basketball? Run 5 lines in 30 seconds. Like you're punishing them and, or
Mhm.
like it's conditioning. And I realize I'm like, basketball, you're conditioning, you're doing everything moving up and down. But it's crazy. Like if I make a kid run, because I have this year, I've gone back old school sometimes and made them run, and then I get mad at myself and I go, guys, this makes no sense. I just made you run for 30 seconds for no reason.
Right.
And I did that in football. I was like, we're not going to do up downs because it makes no sense. But I think it's just crazy how we all have changed because, like you probably did too. This isn't the norm. Like this is exactly how it was. I remember
Yeah.
doing 70 up downs because we gave up like 30 some points. And he goes, we're going to double and you're going to do up downs because you gave up so many points.
Oh yeah. It's definitely different from my playing days. That's for sure.
Or did you guys like have to run a lap and then warm up? Like all this.
Yeah, I mean we did our thing we did all the time was like especially like summer workouts or whatever was a lap and two stadiums and then a
Oh,
lap and two stadiums and you had to do that within a certain time period and you know then if you didn't do it in a certain time period you had to do it again which didn't make any sense because you're obviously going to do it slower the second time around because you're already more tired. But I mean, and our coaches were they were just doing what they knew. They had, I don't ever doubt my coaches had the best intention, but you can only, I guess, do what you know in a lot of ways. So that's why I try to go out and learn as much as I can about different things and guys like Coach Holler and Feed the Cats and all that stuff. And our strength coach, Coach Braswell, does a really really good job with that stuff. When we're doing our speed training stuff, he's big on making sure they got plenty of rest in between the reps so that the next rep can really be, a full speed max sprint, if that's kind of what we're focusing on that day. So he does a really good job with a lot of that stuff.
so were they doing that before you even got there? Like already kind of started that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they had already been doing. I mean, it's not like the whole feed the cats system or anything, but it's a
Yeah.
similar approach. Like hey, we're gonna do our 30-yard sprints right here, and give significant rest time in between reps, and
Right.
we're not gonna go out here and do 10 gassers and you got to get it done in 2 minutes or whatever it is. We may run a 30-yard sprint and then rest, make sure everybody's good to go, and then boom, let's take another one again, trying to hit that max speed because we were fortunate we got some catapult units this year at North
Oh,
Forsyth.
yeah.
we had him last year at Grayson. And our strength coach at Grayson, Coach Mathis, he does a really good job with that stuff too. But with the catapult stuff, now you can really start to track, that type of data of,
Mhm.
max speeds we're hitting and player load and all that stuff. So it's cool to see kind of the technology getting implemented.
And then something else I changed from talking to like Coach Dixon and Coach Moeller up in Minnesota, who just won a state title. He's big on the sprint based, was like the warm up for games because they do RPR stuff, which my head coach claims that he's going to pay for both of us to get it, which would be awesome. Like he wants to understand it. Again, small world. Chris Corfus kind of started that with Holler. Our head coach worked at a school where Chris Corfus was at, so they kind of know each other already, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
One thing I changed was like old school when you warmed up for a game, like, oh, line, we're going to go down there and do some one on ones. We're going to hit, we're going to do this. We're moving around. Even if it wasn't hitting, you're just moving really fast. This year, I'd go down there with them. It was very slow of like, hey, just work on our inside zone step here for this placement, our wide zone. We're going to make sure we get to this placement just so that way it's mentally in your head. We'll 5-on-5, walk through plays really quick, and then we just went to the sideline. And it was to a point where we got to the sideline at times, and we're just watching the wide receivers and quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Remember the first like two games, each game, my kids were like, what are we supposed to do? I'm like, you're resting. You are resting because it is game day. Like you are resting.
Mm-hmm.
Get water, sit down, stand. I don't care. You are resting. And they weren't used to it because they were so used to, oh, line, let's go. We got to do team, because we took forever or they're done. Now
Yeah.
we're waiting on them because we're not like, I was like, oh my God, there's only like 20 minutes left, 15 minutes left. I was like, I only need 4 minutes, if that, to walk through this or really slow. And that was just another thing that changed. And I remember, I think someone in the stands was like, "What's the O line doing?" And I'm like, I'm thinking, I want to turn around and tell this person, we're resting.
Yeah.
Like we're about to play a game. We don't need to go all out and then go into this game dead, like at all.
Yeah. Knocking the crap out of each other in pregame.
Well, then the O line appreciated it, and I was like, "Now, don't take this as I'm trying to make you lazy. I'm just trying to make you guys understand that you're going to be more fresh."
Yeah.
And like I said, each game as we went along at halftime, I'd be like, "You guys feel good?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "You're welcome." I would be an ass. You're welcome. You're absolutely welcome.
Yeah. I think you know, so especially with the O line, there's kind of that fine line of, you got to get them. And I think there's time and place for that, like in the spring, the summer, stuff like that. You got to get their bodies physically prepared for the battle that they're going to endure in the trenches.
Yeah.
Um, because I do think you got to get your body used to just taking that pounding for a significant number of reps. But at the same time, like you said, you don't want to get to September and your guys are just beaten and bloodied already because you've
Yeah.
been hitting them like a freaking battering ram for the past 4 months or whatever it is. So, which is definitely, I think we did a good job of, you know, the years I was at Grayson. COVID was a little different. We obviously had to tweak some things, but
Mhm.
I think it's something that we've done a good job of here as well.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be looking more into the feed the cats and coming up with stuff because he's like, if you are going to complain about it, you better be the one that's coming up with it. And I was like,
Yeah,
okay. And
be the
so
guy that complains and doesn't have a solution.
I yeah, they know me. If I complain, I'm just trying to get underneath their skin and like poke
Yeah,
poke buttons. Um, but I'm the guy that has to come up with almost like a speed training thing. And I'm like, good, it's only 10, 15 minutes. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, because they're going to rest in between. They're only going to, and then that was the other thing I have to try to sell is they're only going to do it 2 or 3 times. What do you mean? And I said, think about it. Like you brought up, if we're running gassers and you do it again, you're not going to be as fast like the second time or the third time. And like you said, if you see that Coach Holler told me that if you're timing and you see and they're slower the second or third time, tell them to stop
yeah,
because their body is rejecting it. And I think that was what Coach Dixon was trying to tell me the first time I talked to him. And I just didn't understand the concept of like the lifting part of it too, even like if your body's rejecting it, like, okay, today's a front squat day, but this kid's body's rejecting it, you have to switch it. Like, hey, go do leg press or go do whatever to see if it matches that.
Yeah.
It never clicked with me because what did we all do when we played? Hey, it's a front squat day. Suck it up and you're going to do it. And
Yeah.
well, I used to front squat 280 and I'm only getting 240 today. Like, what's going on or whatever it was. And you're like, back in the day, it was just like, oh, you're being lazy or suck it up. You didn't drink enough water. And now if you
Yeah.
look back on it, it's like, no, maybe my legs and my body were like saying, hey, today's not the day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, a new sort of a new wave compared to, maybe how things were done, a few years ago for sure.
Yeah. And it wasn't that, I don't mean to keep staying on this, but it's just so crazy. Like, it wasn't that long ago either. Like, it
Yeah.
really
No, it
wasn't.
wasn't. It wasn't.
It like, I graduated high school in 2009, so it wasn't that long. Like,
Yeah. I was 2008. So yeah, it wasn't, bull in the ring and all that stuff was relatively common back then.
I forgot, or like the old school Oklahoma drill, you can't even really do
Oh yeah.
anymore. Or I also like to say we're the tail end of like technology because I remember having just a flip phone and people were like, well, you're a millennial, you're part of this. I was like, hey, when I was in high school, we had computer labs, there was none of that. There was
Yeah.
not smartphone, there was no, so don't tell me what was what. Like, we did not have that. I remember just having to get AIM messengers, not Snapchat.
Yeah.
Like, I hate when people tell me that, like in their 40s, you're part of the problem. And I'm like, pull out your iPhone, you're part of the problem.
Oh yeah.
Like, Blackberries were a game changer, guys. That's all I'm saying. It was a game changer. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. I had you on here late. I know we both got to work tomorrow, or I don't know if you're on Christmas vacation yet, but
Just a couple more days. Couple more days.
we're in the same boat. We go till Friday, and then
Oof. Golly.
yeah, but then we don't go back till January 8th or 9th. So we have it's a trade-off. Like, the school used to go till like the 22nd,
Yeah.
21st, 22nd, but then we have to come back like right after New Year's. So the trade-off, I guess, now, because how the schedule worked out was, hey, we're gonna go till Friday. You don't have to come back till like the 8th or the 9th. And we're like, okay.
Yeah. I think we come back on the 4th. So I guess it's probably about the same amount of time either way.
Yeah, we get more recovery time from New Year's. Well, I coach basketball, so I get no.
Yeah. You'll be grinding.
We have a game Friday, so it doesn't matter to me. People are like, we have to work till Friday. I'm like, I don't care. I have a game on Friday, so I could care less. I'd rather be at the school.
Yeah.
Oh, do you see this thumbs up thing that just popped up?
I do. Yeah. What is that?
You ready to laugh? So you're like my 10th podcast in 2 weeks or something. This has
Uh,
happened a couple times where I've seen that thing pop up. I assume I'm the only one that can see it because I have no idea what it is.
yeah.
So last night I had Coach Carrick on the Flexbone 101 and it popped up and he goes, Steve, what is that? And I go, wait a minute, you can see that? And I went, oh shit, all these other coaches have been seeing it and not saying anything. They're just probably like, what the hell is he doing? I have no clue what that is.
Interesting. I've
It
never seen
comes
that before.
We were Googling it last night, such a great podcast thing, like Googling, trying to figure out like what it is.
Yeah.
And it's only once in a while where I do a certain hand gesture. It won't happen now, but eventually it will happen again if I wait. If I keep my hands down for like 10 minutes and try it again, it
Yeah.
comes up.
Yeah. I've never seen that on Zoom before.
I wanted you to laugh at the very end because I've had like two college coaches on, and I'm sure they're looking at me like, oh, this guy's messing with us, clicking on something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
again, I'm a 2009 kid. I don't know what this is.
Yeah. Still learning some of it.
Like, good thing this wasn't going during COVID because if thumbs up were happening, the kids would have been
Oh yeah. All over it.
all over it. I just wanted you to laugh at the end there. I thought that was hilarious last night with Carrick. He was like, oh no, I can see it. And I went, shit, I can see it.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
thumbs up.
well, coach, I appreciate you coming back on.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me on. Always down to talk some ball.
Yeah, it's great to talk ball and not all basketball.
Yeah. You're going to get all the basketball you want here the next couple months.
Oh yeah, I'll be until almost March. Yeah, middle of February or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, coach, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.